All right. Almost ready. Broadcasting live on air from Sacramento in the middle of the Delta of California, otherwise known as the Macro Contrarian Tourist Hour. This is Jack, and I have a group of new visitors. The first one is going to be one of my most favorite reads. He occasionally posts his articles over at dydd.org. And he is the one, the only, the ranching farmer or the farming rancher. I'm not sure which of those two it is. And our other one, our other guest, I'm really excited to bring in another youth. This is the what I call the Dog Days of August, and we bring in new guests and start introducing them to the show. And you know him from Twitter. And we will be going to the one, the only, Mr. Confidence himself in a few moments. But first, Bobster. You and I have been doing this for a few weeks now. Are you there, my friend? And Bob is not responding. And so, you know, that's the beautiful thing about this live TV show is that you can have everyone queued up, but then when the show starts, if they're not there, you got to keep rolling with it. So, my friend Jared, we're going to go right to you. Welcome live on air. Last week you were going to be joining us, and unfortunately you were in the back 40 doing this horrible thing called work, I believe, and so you were unable to actually make it on the show. So I want to thank you for returning this week. You are live on air, and give us just a little introduction to Jared's world. I know it a little bit, and you make me laugh a lot. And so welcome on air, and tell us a little bit about yourself and your first thoughts. Mute. Mute's a funny thing. Hold on a second. Jared, are you on mute? Hold on. Do I have the wrong... Are you there?
I think Jack's got Jack.
Yeah. You know what? I had you guys muted on the wrong. All right. So I have this. I have this technology, and I missed which when I was shoving on. So out of the 12 tracks, you guys were on the down track. Jared, you're live on air. Take two.
All right. Well, I'm just saying thanks for having me on, and thanks for posting all my stuff on your site. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I am out here in the Oklahoma Panhandle, kind of in the epicenter of what was once the Dust Bowl. We were kind of just coming out of another drought. I farm and ranch out here.
By a drought, how long did it last? How few inches compared to normal was it?
It started in the fall of 2010, and we would normally get 18 to 20 inches a year rain, and we probably got 4 or 5 of the last couple of years, and we've started to get rain again this fall. But it's been pretty trying the last 3 years.
All right, so
better now.
You're in a dust bowl without rain. Are you pulling from an aquifer? Are you like well driven?
Yeah. All of our irrigation is from the aquifer, and that's there's some discussion about how long that'll last. Some water's better than others. I mean, we're kind of robbing Peter to pay Paul by using it, but the whole infrastructure of the area is built upon, irrigation and grains, feedlots, pigs, everything is derived from using water. So
All right. Do you use? I was going to say grow cattle. Do you raise cattle?
yes, we ranch, and it
How many?
basically we're
How many
pretty
head do you
diversified.
run?
About 400 mama cows, and so those with their calves, and then the yearlings they have. We'll get upwards of 1,200 animals on the place at certain times of the year.
Okay. All right. Um, do you feed them your own, or do you actually go out into the market to purchase feed for your cattle, or do you kind of keep it all in the loop?
That would basically try to raise all of our own feed. I mean, I have to purchase some protein supplements. Actually, we're using DDG cubes now for the protein and energy source, and that's really everything else we can either grow or harvest and use a lot of crop residue now. The drought has forced us to kind of relook at what we actually do with regards to feeding the animals. There's a lot of stuff that they'll eat that normally we probably hadn't fed them.
Okay.
So kind of just a matter of survival.
Speaking of which, I've heard some horrible stories about some ranching feedlots with like one guy owning a chocolate factory and he was feeding his cattle leftover chocolates, wrapper and all. So I mean, there's some.
It doesn't surprise me.
There's some like stories out there. Do you eat your own cattle?
Yes. Yeah. Typically, if we have a
all right. So when I show up at your place and we do a barbecue, you're gonna cook one of your own, right?
Yeah, we'll be eating old cow.
All right. Right on. So what is the number one crop for someone like you who can cross over between both ranching and farming? Where is the money for you on an acreage basis?
It would by far corn. Corn is the biggest money maker I can raise, especially in the last 2 or 3 years with the price spike and the margins that are in it. I mean, it's hands down. If you have the water, you raise corn.
All right.
And then
how much water
your cattle can benefit from, the corn residue. I mean, you kind of manage the whole thing holistically and try to make them all kind of work together.
All right. I like to hear that, actually. What is the number one obstacle for a rancher today like yourself?
I'd say, for guys that want to get started, it's just simply, getting the capital or finding access to land and then finding someone willing to loan you the money. I mean, you're talking, especially with beef prices up, cows are more expensive, for somebody to get started just takes a mountain of money. I mean, I think that's the biggest barrier to getting going. And then, here there's not a lot of young people. There are some, but not in mass. So I guess that's probably a good thing in the long run. They're, in the industry, it's going to be a huge issue going forward. If you look at
you're one of the last, right?
The ranchers are very, very, kind of in the final stages of probably what they want to be doing at this point.
All right. Thank you for the give and take here, the answers. At this point, we're going to bring in our second guest, and we will then open up the show to both the roundtable and our guests who are watching the show. So we're going to start taking questions from the audience. Audience, please start reaching out to Bobster. Let him know on Twitter what you want asked, and we will start incorporating those into questions to our panel here. We're now about 15 minutes into the show or so, and I want to thank our newest guest for joining us. He does not lack in confidence. I think that's a good way of introducing him. And he has an opinion. And, with traders, both of those things are needed in this business. So on that note, Garrett, you are live on air. This is the Macro Tourist Hour. Please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're seeing at the market or what you like or dislike about the market at this moment.
All right. Well, hello to the population. I'm an at-home trader. I do some side work, and I'm teamed up with St. Lucie and Hein Bodek at the moment. And I guess currently right now in the markets, what I'm looking for is an oil pullback. I've been a bull for a while. I've been talking with a few guys on Twitter, and now after doing a little research, I'm starting to see that there's going to be a pullback in the oil, so I'm waiting to get a good play going here. And I've just been waiting for the right time to get short the market overall,
Okay.
just so I'm not stuck, getting in too early and riding it up like everyone else.
The chew off the position is a trade that I've known well a few times. We've all been there. If you've played the game and you haven't played the game yet. So in simple terms, when you look at the market, what is it that you see? What is it that brings out either you see an edge or you see something that's wrong? What is the driving issue to you? I know priorly you've been published a year or two ago on high frequency trading. So, would you say today it is still what it was, or have you actually, felt that it's starting to die out? Handing you the football, you're the expert on this topic at this moment.
I hate that word, expert. I'm familiar with it, and I have a basic understanding of it all.
You have an opinion of it.
I
Tell me
think
your opinion.
Well, it's all gotten better overall. My strategy basically fell apart after the whole BATS IPO. And I even mentioned that in the Casey report interview that I did. And there's still predatory algorithms out there, and there's still this game of I want it, I don't want it, I want it, I don't want it. And that's something that's just inherent with having a fast system. But as far as the special order types and all the issues we've been having with routing, there's no reason with what everybody knows that you shouldn't have the ability now to structure yourself in the same manner. There's still disadvantages, and there always will be. It's the way the market's always been. Things are by no means perfect, but they are definitely better than they have been. I can say that.
Good.
From my angle.
What is the driving factor to you in the market?
For why HFT is driving, or overall with the market itself?
Overall. What to you is driving the market today?
Hubris and the Fed.
Okay. So
I mean, it's
Fed-driven.
plain and simple. People are just believing that, there's going to be more money running into the system and everybody's getting long. I mean, you look at the economic indicators, I don't care who you listen to, if you just look at the data, manufacturing hours they're off. We have less people working, doing the same production, and we're at a garbage growth rate. There's no way that we should be pushing highs when we have cities going bankrupt. It just doesn't make sense, and clearly it's not fundamental anymore.
All right.
And I believe, if I may really quick, the Federal Reserve even admitted that about a week and a half ago, claiming that it was all POMO that's been running this market.
I don't think there's a lot of argument from anyone on that topic. Continue on.
Hey,
Look, I know. I'm waiting for a fat pitch so I can turn to the round table and liven up the interview a bit. But so far, you're staying inside the guidelines. Continue on.
Well,
I
don't even know how to continue on.
All right. So how about this? What is the most dangerous thing in the market to you right now?
Probably the marketing of what's going on. I think the most dangerous thing is a bunch of foolish people that are piling in. We have a lot of people that are starting to buy equities. They're buying assets on borrowed money.
Margin?
Like the margin credit that I've been hammering on.
All right, so let's go to margin then. Tell me about margin. Where is it now compared to history on a percentage basis?
But we're running right at the same highs that we've been at in 2007. We've been sitting there for the past 4 months. We're off the high peak, which went higher than 2007. I don't have the chart in front of me at the moment.
No worries.
But we're running right at the very same high levels. It's not a material difference. It's very close. And what we're also going to be looking at is we're going to get these little pullbacks like I was writing in late July that might be 1% or 2%, and it won't be enough to be triggering calls. But as everybody's been taking on this crazy amount of risk, once we start having a sell-off maybe from the big money, the brokers that are lending out this money to these retail guys are going to want their capital back. And without the cash to pay it back, everybody's going to have to sell, and it's going to be a precipitous decline just like it was in 2011.
Okay. All right. In 2007. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I said I certainly agree with that aspect.
All right, the one, the only, the Bobster is on air live with his beautiful red hat on.
It's orange, Jack.
Oh, it's orange. Sorry. Orange hat with red undertones. What's happening with you, Bobster? What are you seeing? Give me a little political feedback. You got the camera. It's your moment in time.
Well, I think the major issue I think everybody is focused upon is Egypt right now. Egypt is a total and complete mess. I don't think the U.S. leadership has shown any. Well, they haven't shown any leadership with regard to the matter, and that pertains primarily to the president, of course.
Oh, bummer.
It is intractable. It's intractable. It is so huge. I'm sure there are a lot of plans going out there to protect the Suez Canal. If you don't know, or if our listeners don't know, both the Saudi government and the UAE have proposed and offered far more money than the U.S. gives in military aid to Egypt. U.S. military aid is about $1.5 billion, which really is just literally spent on U.S. contractors and its in-kind goods. But the UAE, I think, offered about $14 billion, and the Saudis
double-digit
about
numbers.
$11 billion. Yeah, I mean,
real
very
numbers.
large numbers. So.
Okay. I was unaware of double-digit numbers. The last I'd seen, they were still single-digit. So they've
yeah.
come back with the bigger checkbook.
No.
All right. George, while you're out there, you can dive in anytime. I want to make it clear we're open round table now. We're 20 minutes into the show. Any questions that we have from the audience, if you're watching us, I'm sure the audience is probably about 5 people right now, and my mom's probably one of them. Outside of our large audience at the moment, if you have any questions out there, ask us on Twitter or directly. Let us know what you would like asked. And while we wait for that, George, do you have any comments you want to go to now? You've had some opinions lately. Some of them I'd love to respond to, and some of them I just want to chuckle to.
Well, just charge in, of course, if I don't bring it up. I think Egypt is interesting, and I wonder if Egypt is not, in fact, we're receiving some of the first benefits of the U.S. oil shale and natural gas finds of the last decade. What I mean by that is that I don't know if the United States would have let Egypt go as far as it has, nor the Arab Spring for that matter, if we weren't fairly confident about our energy sources going forward. So I think actually Egypt, and I think we're going to see this in Afghanistan, is actually the U.S. disengaging from the area. There will be obviously some interest. There will always be, the Suez Canal and various other points, but the fierce attention and need to make sure that the Middle East is at a certain level of calmness to assure U.S. supply, I think it's changed. I think it's changed quite dramatically. And then
Agreed.
The other thing along with that is that I often see Egypt not so much as like what's happening right now, but it's sort of like a fait accompli, a final act of what really started with the Arab Spring. I think the Arab Spring was just grossly misread. It was not a Google, liberal, Apple guys dancing with iPad type revolution of secularism in the Middle East. The Arab Spring was a fairly well-studied Islamist push to regain power and to counter some of the success the United States has had in the area. And since and I think the administration actually was fogged a bit on this, is that since the people were just looking at the totally wrong view in terms of who's in power, who wanted power, who's losing power, I think this Egyptian counter push or regaining control by the Egyptian army has taken people by surprise. And I don't really think it's a surprising event in itself.
All right. Do you believe that Egypt's going to stabilize in the near term, or do you think it's going to spin out?
I think the blood is just going to flow until it's just very dull pain and very stable.
All right. In very simple terms, we have a real event happening in Syria. We have a real event now in Egypt. And arguably, I've heard that Turkey has cut off the border with Syria and has started pounding northern Syria. Do you believe it's going to break
Southern Syria?
Sorry, southern Syria. Do you believe that a continued meltdown will continue in the greater region outside of Egypt?
I think I'll just interject very quick. I think the Islamists are getting smoked out. I think they came in wolf under sheep's clothing. Erdogan, of course, and they're being called out and discovered for what they actually are, which is a fairly odious fascist form of government from my point of view. Just replace the ethnic identity that Germany had with an intolerant Islam that's out of the Najd Desert for circa 600 AD, and I think that's basically fascism. So this idea that there's a benign, liberal, democratic Islamist is out to lunch, and I think it's just being exposed for what it is.
All right. Definitely not lacking for opinion there. Thank you, George. Do we have any questions from the round table for either of our guests, our rancher or our trader? Is there any questions for our guests?
I do actually. I have one question for the our rancher.
All right.
Or excuse me, for the high frequency.
Sorry, we're switching.
Trader.
There we go.
Sorry about that. I confused the topics. I'm really I've sort of approached high frequency trading, backing away from all the French Polytechnique guys and all the geniuses and all that, Razzmatazz, Citadel, et cetera, Renaissance. Is that high frequency trading is basically as the New York Stock Exchange hit the wall and disassembled. They had figured out algorithms that were effectively as if you could get a peek on the specialist book. And all that search for speed, all that, it's cloaked under all sorts of very, very technical and mathematically dense formula. But basically, is that certain patterns can be omitted now that the specialist is out of the realm of life, which you can actually find out that there's like a 6,000 order, like an eighth below. Like I'm showing my age, but even using the word eighth, or a 12,000 order above, and it's almost like the specialist took off to the washroom with you and gave you a peek, and I think where this high frequency trading going is I would think that the specialist function has to be reintroduced, so I imagine there are going to be some speed bumps or some sort of delay so that those with the facilities to recognize these patterns no longer have that advantage. Otherwise, I just don't see how the hell we can handle liquidity at tough times.
I agree. I mean, that's got to happen. We're going to have to go back to the specialist, but the only problem is we're going to have to pay, to have somebody take on that risk. So it's probably going to cost maybe a little more to trade, but a lot of the HFT guys are going to be pissy about it because obviously they like their advantages. But I don't think using the systems the way we're using the systems is the right way to go. We should have an individual that represents a group of firms and sells on their behalf and makes a market for it. But like I said, they're going to have to be compensated for the risk more than a computer has to be compensated for it. The reason things are so cheap right now is because it's a little easier, to quote unquote cheat. I don't want to say it's cheating because, we didn't have rules in place for them to break. They just went and did this. So I don't think you can really call it cheating. But we're going to have to go back to the specialist setup.
Jared, I have a question for you, if you don't mind.
Yeah, go ahead.
Why don't you just tell me what the effective weather has been this particular year? It strikes me, I live now in the southeast, and it has been extremely cool here, to the extent that like a local golf course that's down the block had closed itself down for 8 weeks, and they needed 90-plus degree weather, and it has been nothing but cool 80s. I mean, for me, it's been lovely, but for the golfers, and I'm just wondering what the farming risk is.
Well, I'll put it in perspective of what's happened in the corn. Where they early in the Midwest they had a lot of rain and a lot of delayed planting, so the crop itself is going in later than normally would be, and now you've got the risk of it not maturing before like an early frost or something of that nature. There's obviously enough corn planted, enough acres to rebuild supplies, but this year it's kind of been cool, wet spring, late planting. Then everybody had tons of moisture, everything was great, but then it kind of shut off raining in some places. There's good and there's bad. There's really not like a definitive pattern. One place is this, it's not uniform across the Corn Belt.
Yeah, I saw something today, actually, that was from a farmer in Utica, Illinois. And even though I'm an Illinois resident, and I used to know every city in Illinois, but I don't know Utica. But I assume it's very southern, and they had tremendous problems with their corn crop.
Yeah, probably. I think I saw that about tipping back, which basically what that amounts to is the plant's trying to make its grain. Like the plant's just trying to survive. It's trying to make as much grain as possible. Whenever you shut off the heat and the sunlight, it's just your corn plant's essentially a solar cell. And at the end of its life, you start robbing it of, its basic survival of sun and heat. It's going to start making less grain. Therefore, it's going to abort the tips, the end of the ear, and you spread that over enough area, you start reducing yield. You can get into problems. Now the crop's probably far enough along, you're not going to wipe it out, but you're going to knock a dent in it. And then you get into,
Jared.
is the crop mature enough to get to a frost? So, go ahead.
Quick question: what level of knowledge are you able to gain from the satellite photos that you guys are gaining access to at this stage? Specifically, let's say your neighbors and you. We were talking earlier off camera about having knowledge of what your neighbors are growing based on the seed they planted versus the seed you planted from provider's perspective, and then being able to track which ones are doing best in localized conditions year over year. Are you able to actually track knowledge at this stage? Are you gaining it from each other when you guys have coffee, at the coffee shop? You guys always have talked. Question is, are you guys keeping notes?
I think you probably see as much from the roadside and just driving by as what you would gain from the satellite image. That might show you more detail, but you can, in an area, you're going to understand, hey, this variety's not performing well, this one is. I don't know that the satellite gives you any advantage over what you would just normally get by driving by. Now, in the future, I could see where if you were to expand it, county-wide, statewide, nationwide, then you could extrapolate some data points that you could say, yes, definitively, this is a better hybrid. This, but on a local basis, side by side, I don't know that it's that big of a deal yet.
All right. Bobster, can you go rattle the internet and find out if there's a question for any of our guests?
Yeah, I just posted one, Jack, and actually I guess it's a question primarily for me. It says, what's the next big crisis for Congress, debt ceiling, other? And the problem here is that the Republicans have no idea about where they want to attack next. Leadership is in one position, very substantial portions of the party, i.e., Rand Paul, i.e., the fine junior senator from Texas, are in an entirely different position. So it's extraordinarily unclear. I did read going into this weekend that Senator Mitch McConnell, who faces a very difficult re-election campaign in 2018, or 2014 rather.
I'm like, damn, you're already tracking vicious ones out in 2018. That's a political genius.
I am out that far, but let me finish with my Mitch McConnell line. He's facing a very difficult primary campaign from an individual who seems to be, at least based on what we know, self-financed. A quote-unquote Tea Party guy, but his history seems to lead you in a different direction. Mitch McConnell's already put out hellfire missile campaigns on his nonsense, but Mitch McConnell has a very difficult road to hoe and will not necessarily be coming back to Washington in September in the mood to make a deal.
All right. So what are your thoughts? And to me, this, I think, is becoming one of the biggest stories. That's page 32 or some silly place in the newspaper that doesn't exist anymore in life. What the hell is going on with our national debt that it hasn't changed a penny in something like, 80 days or some flipping number?
Well, that's
Honest.
it's just kind of a hoot. It's pure financial engineering. It makes no sense. It doesn't bear any resemblance to reality. They're cooking the books, and basically,
you.
I think
Thank
the
you.
U.S. Treasury has said so.
All right. Does our trader have any comments about cooking and Fed and those kind of fun topics?
Well, I mean, I'm just going to state the obvious. We all know finance is a game of hide the duck.
Hide the duck.
I mean, that's what it's all about. I mean, we keep adding new layers of ways to just hide these levels of basic slavery. I mean, can you honestly fathom $16 trillion? Like, that's just a definition of, the amount of trouble that we're just running ourselves into, and it's going to have to come due, and someday reality is going to hit them all.
All right. So
I'm gonna take the flip side of that.
all right. Here comes George.
I think 16 trillion is very easy to imagine. I just got to drive the United States across the United States and look out the window. 16 trillion is the GDP of the United States. It's been basically doubling about every 12, 13 years. I think what's going on is that attitude to debt, just as perhaps you expressed with 16 trillion, it's a shock. It's a psychosis where people just can't come to grips with how quickly and how large the United States has gotten, and how powerful it is, its reach, and its finances. And I think the actual number in terms of what the actual debt is for the United States, I think there's like a 50% tolerance. I think it could be effectively 8 trillion. It might be 25 trillion. And what debt is right now in the United States, as long as we have seniorage and our position like Rome, is really a poker chip for keeping power dialogue going. Like the Republicans can say X, the Democrats can say Y, corporate lobbyists can go in for Z, and the money isn't real. What is real is the power that you have under a certain subcommittee in terms of being in charge of this, or in terms of the Fed, in terms of deciding open market operations. That's where the money's real.
George.
But in terms of the aggregate of money, I think it's an abstract.
George, what do you think about a constitutional convention again? We had a couple of them a couple of centuries ago. What do you think about a new one? Is it needed? Is it required to get us out of the status we found ourselves in today, which is not where I believe most Americans thought they would end up just a few short years ago?
I think the last take a look at the last constitutional process we had, which was for prohibition, and what wasn't involved really was drinking. Although that was certainly the pizzazz, and there's a lot of talk about it. But as far as a cash flow item and
that was the calling card. That wasn't the punching line.
Well, the thing was what prohibition all about was the post Reconstruction, reorganization of the power, the dialogue between the feds and the state and local, and also women's suffrage has popped in. So going forward is to deal with your question. I think if we are to have a constitutional process coming up, it's not going to be about debt or any of these issues, because I really don't see them of great importance right now.
All right, Bob.
Well, let me pose this to you, George, just to get your thoughts. I certainly accept your premise about the U.S. national debt, but I think that we have a far different issue that relates to the individual state debts and the local debts that have been accumulated that are, to my mind, unsustainable, i.e. Illinois, i.e. New Jersey, i.e. California. I just don't see them as sustainable.
Doesn't New Jersey have
agree.
Doesn't New Jersey and Illinois and California have 3 of the highest tax rates in America? Just asking.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, and that's where the rubber hits the road. That, in as far as the state debt goes, that's real money. I mean, that's really somebody's bank account and pocket, and employees getting compensated. And I think I showed it around a while ago, but it's sort of I thought it was hilarious, but it's sort of grim. Was I don't know if it could be read, but CalPERS, after like I don't know, spending $5 million on consultants and guys like Russell's, and finally cut to the chase and figured out like what are we all about? What's CalPERS to do with that $269 billion? And I won't go through all of them, but the first one, which just both causes just tears and dismay, and it's like, oh my God, it makes you sick. But also, it's hilarious. It's the number one item for CalPERS investment policy is liabilities should influence the asset structure.
It should. And mark to myth and mark to unicorns is okay.
I thought,
Marks to unicorns.
I thought, well, on the other hand, it's good they at least said that, right? I mean,
It's
a start.
insane.
So yeah, I think state and local.
Oh no! Come on! You're not done, man. I just read some of the more. Read number 2.
It's just hilarious. I don't think it shows up. At least it doesn't show on my screen. The second important rule with this $269 billion fund that must follow is a long time investment horizon is a responsibility and an advantage. Now, I guess that's versus what? Versus being irresponsible and
a short horizon.
Stabbing yourself in the thigh with scissors. I don't know. It's just hilarious.
CalPERS.
How many
just
millions
hilarious.
did CalPERS? Oh, never mind. We'll just let this one go.
But I think this sort of cuts right to the heart of like what your comment was for state and local. You know, there are some tough challenges ahead for this.
You know, and George, on that, putting that same point out further, I mean, what we're seeing happening with the working public is people are increasingly retiring at earlier ages
And
I
living
think
longer.
This is going to put an increased and clearly live longer. It's going to put an increased burden on these state pension funding systems that are completely unworkable. Completely unworkable.
When my dad was.
Interestingly enough,
Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No, I was just going to say when my dad was born, life expectancy was 53. He's 89 and still going.
Yeah. Good luck. Good luck. We're going to be paying these people to the end. And I mean, the state regimes that they have set up in many states, New Jersey included, I believe Illinois included, have these as part of their state constitutions. It's unfathomable. It is unfixable. It's ridiculous.
It's just like New Jersey and almost all states have a balanced budget requirement, and they say a lot of strutting and fuming and yes, that's what we're going to do, and okay, the rate that we have in our pension is for discounting purposes 15%. It's just like it's like Alice down the rabbit hole. Everything's going fine, and you sort of make some sense of what's going on, and then poof, off they go into fantasy and fabrication and not just small stuff like whoppers, like big $60 billion whoppers.
All right. I have a question, and it says, my main question on this is whether or not Israel ends up playing a role in the long haul. Is Israel going to play with us, or are we on divergent paths?
I mean, if you want me to weigh in on that, I think that
please, you're
we are
a political guy.
I think we're on somewhat divergent paths, but Israel knows where its bread is buttered. Israel will go no further, nor will Bibi Netanyahu, who, as one may remember, who closely follows political wars. He jumped in with Mitt Romney, hook, line, and sinker in early 2007, 2012, only to run away, and now he's become completely flatlined. I guess he just had medical surgery last week, I guess. But Israel's not going to run too far because they don't have any way to solve this mess. I mean,
Saudi Arabia is not going to come up with $16 billion for them. if we pull
No.
from Israel.
Yeah, I don't see that happening anytime soon.
Clearly, they will not. And I mean, if anybody is paying attention to Iraq,
The other cousins.
Iraq is a total and complete mess.
Isn't Iraq the equivalent of the Balkans? It's just 3 states in one, and they haven't gotten around to drawing a line in the blood. I mean, sand.
Well, somebody should tell GWB about that.
What about Iraq? What about the idea that Iraq has had huge progress, not in terms of how much blood is going down, but which I'm about to say something really thoughtless and cynical, I guess. But they're fighting and they're killing each other now for oil. They're not fighting and killing each other anymore for ideology or religion, and that's a huge improvement, don't you think? Speechless.
He's speechless. We've shut up the Bobster. He has
No.
There he is. There he is.
I'm sorry. I have my speaker on mute. I think that's totally wrong, George. I think the personal struggles between the Sunnis and the Shiites are just mayhem. It's absolute mayhem, and it is all about Sunni and Shiite. And you go to Kurdistan, it's a whole different set of issues. But no, I would not differ with you that there has been tremendous strides, but there's no way of fixing it because the partisans don't have any interest in fixing it. They don't want to fix it. They love living in chaos, obviously. They have been taught to live in chaos. They've been living in chaos now for 20 years, and so be it.
All right, gentlemen. So do we have any other questions out there from our audience? Anyone have any questions they would like to ask any of the roundtable? If not, while we wait for a question to come in, I got a trading question on options. Is the liquidity there anymore? I honestly haven't tried to push anything through the options market in a while. Is the options market driven? If someone places a big order in the options, is it now being hedged into the illiquid equity markets at a level that it's noticeable?
No, there's liquidity there.
Okay.
I mean, obviously on any scale, it doesn't, if you're trying to drop $1 trillion, yeah, you're probably not going to get it like what happened over in, what was it, India or something.
China had a whoops in their markets. They had a flash up or something, I think.
Yeah, and as far as I know, our options market is fine. I deal with a lot of option guys and guys that do some decent volume in the SPY, and everything's been fine. I haven't heard any major issues. It's usually most of this issue is with the equity markets. All that other stuff is because you can just keep writing new contracts. You know what I mean? So the liquidity's there.
All right. So go ahead.
I do have a question here from one of the guys.
Yeah. Please. Hold on. You're dragging for a second. Go ahead and ask now.
All right. I got a question for you, Bob, from one of my traders. How about the misunderstanding that the U.S. debt funding needs are driving the taper and not the actual economic data?
That's a fascinating question. I mean, I honestly believe that the taper is more about Bernanke trying to kind of burnish his image than anything else. I mean, what is apparently clear to me now is, the betting on Bernanke, Summers as the replacement to Bernanke is now about 70%.
I know, it's bad.
That befuddles me. I thought the easy pick for Obama would have been Yellen. Although, inside sources today also came out and said that that underlings of Obama are still trying to convince Geithner to take the role. I don't see that as happening. Geithner still is kind of a mess, although he's on board. But if he doesn't get it, it looks like Larry S. is getting it.
I think Summers is just going to get crushed. And
in
why I
the
say
job.
that is that I don't think certainly the press, but but I'm not seeing much respect for the staffers and the way the Fed is put together.
Agreed.
The Fed is an aggregation of various key points of research, and it's collegial. I think I mentioned this a couple of weeks ago. And Summers certainly showed by his Harvard experience that he has got just a lead foot in terms of dealing with all the political ways and means of a group of brilliant peers.
So what you're saying is that you and I would probably have about the same outcome involved.
He's going to charge in. I think he's going to end up like a Burns, where he's just going to get embargoed by the staff, and they're just
that would be interesting if we had another 9-month, a Fed manager that, quite frankly, few people know the story that we're actually referencing here. George, do you want to tell the story, or shall
I? Go ahead, you.
I'm going to do the very quick win and toss it to you. Before we had the Savior arrive and save America, we had a Federal Reserve chairman who, quite honestly, flopped on the job, and in 9 months he was quickly promoted. And when you think about it, if you're chairman of the Federal Reserve, what can they use to call it a promotion without being elected anywhere? There's only one other job. They gave it to him. And they got him out of the Federal Reserve.
Secretary of Treasury.
Yes, it is. Go ahead, George, with the rest of the story.
Yeah, there's a story. It's just a quick illustration, but I think it showed the temperament. Is that Burns came in and started to really pound the table, and he was a genius and understood all this Keynesian stuff, say Alice Samuelson and all that good stuff. Very similar to Summers, actually. And then and he was a very clever fella. But then he was really getting pissed off at the FOMC meetings because everyone would light up, and they wouldn't just light up. It'd be Volcker in there, Volcker types with like shitty cigars and pipes and cigarettes, and he was a non-smoker. So he put all these signs. The next FOMC meeting, he put all these signs all over the place, by order of the chairman, no smoking. And apparently
by the
whole
order
FOMC,
of the chairman.
Something like that. They just looked at it for like 2 seconds, and then everyone just lit up, and they just started blowing smoke at him. They literally blew smoke at him, I think it was very. It's a good story in terms of how that there's a complexity to the Fed, and there's just massive power amongst all the staffers and the voting members. It is. What's the genius of Volcker and Greenspan, where they're able to get seemingly consensus. Now, of course, what they would do is they would pay off a few staffers and this and that guy, and they just beat the crap out of somebody who is like daring to not say that he's in consensus. I don't think Summers has that. Will gain that respect.
Subtlety. He'll try the hammer, and he won't be able to wield it well.
I think they'll chew him up.
See, I would see Summers coming in though and trying to be a cowboy. As Bernanke's trying to taper right now and try to get out, it's because they're running out of things to do. I mean, if the situations get worse, they're not going to be able to make everybody feel good about the markets and that the Fed's backstop and everything. Whereas if Summers came in, I could just see him just going like a Wild West cowboy, creating new things, pushing everything to the limit.
Speaking of
and
cowboys,
really not giving a shit about it.
Jared.
Yes.
I got a question for you. What's finance like in acreage out there? Are guys able to flip dirt right now? And are people still hitting all-time highs even in your droughtish area?
Yeah, I'd say the market has, it's never been the $10,000-$20,000 an acre like it is in the Midwest, but yeah, acreage is still high for this area. And I don't know. I think it's just people are just investing in land because they feel it's safe, rather than putting it in some crap CD and getting nothing. They would rather put it there. And I don't, cash flow wise, just if you're running a business on it, land itself doesn't support the practices on it.
Okay.
So how long can that go? I mean, it's kind of like you guys talk about. Everybody's trying to short the equity markets. Well, I feel the same way about land. I wish there was some way to short that, but I'd probably be in the same boat, wrong on all counts, and just get ran over. So,
what about bankers and buying equipment. If you want to walk out there and buy one of those giant combines we were talking about earlier, are there bankers willing to just write big fat checks right now? Are they willing to give it to you at low prices?
I think that when corn was $7, $8, people were pretty loose with financing, but as it comes down to the reality of we might be looking at $3, $4 corn for a couple of years to buy back demand, you're seeing people kind of rein in, making sure everything cash flows from year to year, or they're not going to back somebody who can't service the debt that they're going out and strapping themselves to.
All right.
Is ethanol going to be maintained, do you think? Does this corn drop mean that it's sort of telling us that ethanol is no longer be a gas additive going forward?
I can't see it. I think if anything, they might get the 12% blend and people push for the 15. But I mean, there'll be a point that ethanol. It's a huge demand driver in the corn market. I mean, you cut out ethanol and you could just kiss corn price goodbye for years.
All right. So that brings up a real question. How much longer is corn going to stay up here, and is it worth taking the risk of planting corn now if you think that you're in a newer, lower range? I mean, I personally have contracted. I've moved up to almost 40% for 2014 next year, and I'm not opposed to going out. Go and lock in the prices now to try to survive the downturn. So that way you're not producing below cost of production. Now I can't speak to anybody else as whether they're doing that or not, but if I truly believe it's going down, then you just go hedge your bets. All right. Where do you see corn 3 months, 6 months, and 9 months from now?
3 months, you could be looking at $3, $3.80, $3.90, $4 corn. I don't know that if you get to that point, if you don't see a lot of demand coming back fairly quickly, you're probably going to stay at that level. I mean, the cattle industry has been decimated by drought. You don't have near the animals on feed, and it takes a while to build that back up. That's just a feed demand base. Ethanol's kind of at the most it'll use. I mean,
that was my next
exports
question.
Could pick up. That could help.
How long is it going to take to rebuild the cattle in America? If we bring prices of corn back down where it's cheap to feed cattle again, are you going to start growing bigger, larger herds?
3 years. It takes if I keep the animals that are on the calves that I've got right now, I've got this year, it'll take another year to breed that animal, and then another year to have that calf. You're 3 years from, if I make the decision today to start retaining replacements, building a herd, you've got that much time before that animal produces a product that hits the market. So, you've got a long time, and then in the process of rebuilding the herd, you're shrinking available beef supplies even more. So you kind of you're doubling up.
I'm wondering about cattle and its future. That's where I'm digging at here. Is cattle starting to look interesting?
I think cattle are at a very high price right now.
It appears that I have someone I appear to have a guest at my door. All right, the wife's shutting the door. There we go. I was going to say I've got a guest, and actually this office is right off the front door, so we're about to have people dive into our show as we do the wind up. Continue on.
I would just say I think you could see meat even go higher just because it's kind of a squeeze. We've in the drought we killed cows to make up for what we didn't have on the available meat supplies. We killed cows, we killed everything we could to eat it. Now that we've wiped out the factory, I think that you're going to see, to rebuild the factory or the beef herd, you're going to shrink it even further, and you could see some. How high will the market go? I don't know what people will spend what are you going to spend for a steak or hamburger?
All right, are you ready to grow your herd?
I've been holding replacements back. I've kind of trying to front run the deal by keeping younger animals and getting rid of old ones. Get in the mode of where I can kind of unleash the beast and hit everything at the time that the market gets high. So.
All right. All right, gentlemen, we're getting near the end of this episode, so we're going to do a tour of the round table, and everyone gets their 1 to 2 minutes. Don't worry about timing it. Tell us what you're looking at in the next week, what you find interesting. We're going to start this one off with our other guest, Garrett. You're up. You're on camera. What are you looking at going forward until you're on the show again?
I'm waiting for an oil pullback right now. I'm going to expect just maybe some long plays coming on Monday and Tuesday. I'm looking for Wednesday or Thursday to spark a pullback, and I'm hoping to be able to run that for a month. As far as equities go, I have a feeling it's probably just going to be a flat week right now as we feel at the top, minus some exogenous event that's going to be moving either the Forex or, like I said, the oil markets. I think we're just going to be flat for the week.
All right, thank you. Bobster, the man, the myth.
You know, I have to concur with Garrett's conclusions. I mean, I tend to see the same thing. I think that short term we have a huge problem with the Suez Canal for gas inflows, and you know that's going to keep crude rocking a little bit. I think, you know, although I think I concur with his sentiment that long term, I think it's a short.
All right. George, do you have any charts besides the shark you want to slide in before we end this episode? He appears to be on mute and not here. George?
Uh-oh.
There he is.
There we go. Sorry about that. My habit is to keep hammering away at an idea until it stops working. And I think I got the read of the Fed, and I think it's the right idea, and it's been working since June. So I'm just going to keep hammering at it. This picture, to me, depicts what's going on in the market right now. The shark is the Fed, and that little kayaker, you know, having a good time with all that beautiful blue water, you know, totally ignorant of what the hell's underneath them, is the stock market. And it's not that the
Excellent.
that we're you know the stock market's going to go into another Great Depression or whatever, but I think what's happening is that
he's not in
there's
charge of his future, even if he thinks he is.
Yes, he's totally either because that shark ain't gonna like pay attention to him, or life is gonna end as he knows it. So that's what's happening, and in particular, like getting away from like some fun fun quips. This is the main event. I cut this slide off Bullard, August 14th. He put an interesting slide deck together for sort of a bit of a Hamlet type of approach, like, you know, should we taper, should we not taper, woe is me, and he's been doing that lately. But he did come up with this nice slide which shows the change in the Fed funds expectation as shown by the futures market, and I think what he's actually using is just the Fed funds market. I don't think he's really doing anything too tricky or much analysis.
It's not a lot of exotic, but it is what it is.
It is what it is, and I'm going to use it for purposes that Bullard did not intend to. But if you take into account, there's two interesting things here. Is that yeah, the market's gone to hell. 10 years are up. All the futures have to rearrange. So the expectations of the slope or the pricing of Fed funds has changed dramatically since the June 20th Bernanke press conference. And the other interesting thing is that he picked it up for the last two dates that he did, which is we're getting an interesting little wavelet right around August 14th. And what this is I think this is starting to become the disconnect. And I think you can also look at this as the actual read of when the Fed will raise rates. And it's starting to indicate that it's not going to be 25. And I think as this progresses, I suggest that it's going to end up 50. In fact, in just the last graphing he had was August 8th, which is this dotted line. And then I took a read on it August 15th, just a few days later. And it's not all chopped up like this. This is just the fact that I can't draw worth a damn. But the schedule has dramatically increased, and also this little hump has moved to the left and has increased. And then when you looked at it 1 day later, it had actually moved even further. Basically, the time for when the Fed funds are going to be raised and the likelihood that they're going to be 50 basis points the first raise.
Is changing
First, that
daily.
timing it is just screaming to the left. In other words, we've moved 18 months since June 20th, and it seems what it is that every 10 basis points of the 10-year are back euros, which I watch, is worth about 30 days of the scheduling of when expectations for the Fed fund raise is.
So 50
Now,
basis points is cooked and booked, you'd say.
I think it's going to be 50, and then not only that, it's already in July of 14. When we started talking, having fun on the show, it was all the way back in toward December of 2015.
Yes. Yes, we've gone from
then
December to correct. We've chopped a
it
good
is
14 months,
screaming
15 months off.
Right. So what I think this means is that tapering is a word nobody's even going to remember the hell that we even used it. Very shortly, probably in about a month's time. I suspect the FOMC is going to come out with a asymmetrical language, which starts to say that the risk is perceived to be inflation, and the risk is perceived to be growth, and that trust of that guy in the kayak and forward guidance, I think it's going to be sorely challenged. I think you're out of your gourd to think that the Fed, first, has the power, and two, is going to stick to their guns like some contract, like some social contract with the forward guidance.
Right.
They're not even
Right.
we're going to say a few things to them in about a month's time, and they're going to say, forward guidance? What's that? Woodford? Who's he? And we're going to be right back to the same old 1980 Fed.
Very good. Thank you, sir. All right. Mr. Rancher, we're coming back to you one last time before we wind up this show, before you wander off into the back 40 acres and get lost again. Hopefully you'll return for next week's episode. What are your thoughts looking forward as you look at your corn grow and you drive around in the Mega Rotor water sprayer thingy? What's crossing your rancher's mind at this time, or farming mind?
This coming week, you've got the Pro Farmer Tour. They'll be all over the Midwest, diving into fields.
Have they ever showed up
You'll
on your
see
property?
I'm sorry?
Have they ever showed up on your property?
No.
Or not that you're aware of?
I'm in the fringe of any kind of corn belt. I'm the outlier, so they don't take much of what I have to make a crop. But that's going on in the Midwest. You'll see a lot of news about that. If they find better than what's expected, worse, I think you'll see that's going to be a big market mover in corn. The weather, if there's calls for early frost, if it's rain,
That brings up a topic I want you to come back for. I want you to come back, and I want to discuss with you seasonality for planting, and if you are noticing any changes in when seasons start, when seasons end, or heat, because farmers live on that edge of what they can and cannot produce based on property.
Yeah, I mean, your extreme weather events like we've had the last couple of years have kind of changed the game in some regards, but also you've got things like what affects some of my planting dates. I want to make sure that I get in by an insurance deadline. Whether that's agronomically the best thing to do,
okay,
it's questionable. I mean, I could plant corn all the way up till May and June, but I can't insure it if I go.
Well, we just lost you. You can't insure after when?
So. You've got several factors.
Jared,
weather.
Jared, we lost you. When?
Our final plant day for corn here is May 15th.
May 15th. That's what I was trying to find out. Thank you. We lost that
Okay.
part. You locked up on that. All right, gentlemen, audience, I want to thank everyone for joining us and being with us during this tour. This is the Macro Tourist Hour. Bobster, one last word as my wingman to wind the show up. You're it, and then we're going to turn this bad boy off.
Adios, amigos.
Adios, amigos.
Great cast. Thank you, George. Thank you, Garrett. Thank you, Jared. I think you guys just did wonderful stuff.
Thank you, everyone, for being on board the show. We hope that you guys will return again. And before I end this show, I'm going to throw out a teaser. DYDD.org/TV has a bit of an announcement to make. We're probably going to be rolling out a second show coming out in about a month to 6 weeks. It's in early production, and by early production, I mean I'm not going to be the host of this show. I will help production in the back end and even be a voice potentially, like, hello, this is Jack. But outside of that, it won't be my show. Garrett, if you want to make any comments about your thoughts on a trading show, now would be that moment. Oh, we got you on mute. Mute.
See, too good at putting that thing in. We're basically going to be starting a trader show, and hopefully the idea is either have it during the day or in the evening. I'm not sure whether to do it daily, by every other day or what.
Let's do a
Wednesday.
Wednesday during market hours, maybe even lunch hour Wednesday to start, and we'll do that as kind of our dark show to get going.
Yeah, I'm just looking for a group of guys to come on and just tell us what they're seeing. Basically rant, rave, just provide some entertainment, some insight, and just keep it very loose and just straight for the guys on the desk.
Love it. All right, my friend. Welcome to your first episode. Both of you are invited to return anytime that you can drop in on a Sunday show. And Garrett, I look forward to playing the dark voice of producer to your show as you round up some traders and we find out what's happening on the street in real time. On that note,
thank you. Yeah, let's have some fun with this.
Looking forward to it. Expect the show sometime late September. To the rest of our audience, Macro Tourist Hour will be back next Sunday, and we will have a new lineup of guests, regular guests, new guests, and we look forward to you joining us then. Until then, have a safe week out there.
Hey, cheers.
Thank you.